Is our dearest Venti still worth pulling for? That's what I'll be telling you today. Let's get into it. Venti's best capability is without a doubt his insane crowd control, his burst being a very effective grouper for smaller enemies. He's able to offer this to you without much resource investment either. Simply level him to 90 to increase his swirl damage and grouping strength, slap some ER on him, and you'd be good to go. However, actually, pouring some time and effort into his build and talents can result in Venti dealing some considerable sub-DPS. Don't crown his normals unless you're a fellow dedicated simp. That capability of his allows him to completely sweep crowds of smaller enemies. He's able to provide this insane crowd control for you with very little field time, being able to just shoot off his burst and then swap off field for your other teammates to do their thing. Not only this, but his burst also has very little downtime. It has a tidy cost of only 60, with his A4 restoring 15 energy to himself after his burst ends. He also ascends with energy recharge, making him comfy to build, having a base of 132% ER at level 90. That's 32% ER just off of his ascensions. With all this combined, you can honestly just throw a Favonius or Elegy on Venti and call it a day. You'll have his burst up for years. Venti is also the master of convenience when he works. Seriously, you can completely clean off enemies with that void creating burst anywhere. For you casual players out there, Venti is absolutely an ideal unit for Overworld and will make exploration a breeze. This convenience also can't be understated in Abyss Floors 9 and 10. It'll make your life so much easier. So because of his near constant uptime and the strength of his suck, Venti is absolutely the AoE king. Take a shot every time I say suck this video. You'll end up more wasted than Mr. Bartobas over here. He's also the king of my brain 24/7. Just look at that little. Also, people often say Venti is completely worthless in single target. This isn't entirely true. Sure, you can't abuse his immense crowd control, but Venti's personal damage is pretty much just as good as Kazuha's. You're just trading the damage percent buff for Venti's energy refund and his elegy buff. Plus, Venti's good when he works, right? People can really underestimate how often Venti does work. Pretty much every Abyss features a Venti half, and there never has been and never will be an Abyss with 3 boss chambers. In recent Abysses, Venti has shined quite brightly, and his value is pretty much never 0. So now, I'm sure you're wondering, how does Venti stack up against the other meta Animos? For starters, he's the cutest animal in general, so that's a plus. Against the big bad Kazuha and Sucrose, honestly, it just boils down to what content you're facing. Kazuha in general is a highly multifaceted unit with insane meta value and is arguably one of the best characters, if not the best character right now. So it's understandable why some would believe Venti isn't worth it if you already have Maple Syrup Man. The main area where Venti completely trumps Kazuha is, once again, in those scenarios where you're facing a ton of small, groupable enemies. With Kazuha, while his grouping is nothing short of incredible as well, his skill can take up quite a bit of field time compared to Venti, who's just press Q and then go to the toilet. As much as I adore my Wind Waifu, I won't undersell Kazuha. If you don't have Kazuha, pull for him first, you won't regret it. If you already have Kazuha, on the other hand, in my opinion, Venti is still extremely valuable to have for those annoying situations where he works extremely well, which once again is quite often. You'll find that he beats Kazuha when it comes to these scenarios. Then for Sucrose. Thing is, Sucrose is great, but she's mostly great on paper. She's difficult and clunky to execute, and while people may like to point to her C6 as a point of value she brings to the table, it's very dysfunctional and hardly ever absorbs an element. In this case, the main reason you'd use Sucrose is for her incredible EM sharing capabilities. She's also quite a nice driver in some comps. In general, I would say that Venti is still worth pulling for, even if you're an avid Sucrose enjoyer, since while the Wind Fox is highly valuable, you'll find she can't take advantage of her full kit sometimes. Once again, Venti wins by a huge margin whenever his grouping is effective. Plus, why only enjoy one Wind Waifu? Why not 2? There is a little note with Venti compared to other Animos. If you didn't know, you need to be on field for 4-piece Viridescent Venerer to proc. With Venti, since his field time is so short, it's possible to cast his burst and swap off so fast, but you don't swirl when Venti's on field. This is mostly a problem specific to Venti, but it's very uncommon and you won't find it being an issue most of the time, but it's just something to note with Venti. Don't swap off of him too fast. Plus, with Venti, like all other Animos, Don't underestimate positioning with him. If you position yourself properly on field, you can group all enemies at once and sweep, as opposed to randomly tossing out your burst and not sucking in all enemies. Just because he's drunk doesn't mean you have to play drunk. Another thing with Venti is that he has one special quality over other Anemos. While Kazuha has his damage bonus and Sucrose has her EM share, Venti has excellent battery capabilities. His A4 restores 15 flat energy to all party members of the element his burst absorbed. For example, if you're playing a freeze team of Ganyu, Mona, Venti, and Shenhe, and his burst absorbs Cryo, Ganyu and Shenhe will both restore 15 energy, so you're able to build less ER on your units when you're playing them with Venti. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, why not consider liking and subscribing? Maybe even leaving a cool comment down below. If you don't, you'll turn into a cute femboy. Don't say I didn't warn you. Moving on. When debating whether a unit is still worth pulling for, it's good to take a look at how they actually fare in modern content. So how does Venti do? Better than you'd expect. Quite a lot of the enemies Venti couldn't suck before have been nerfed and can now be picked up by his burst. Kairagis and Spectres are good examples to name, especially Spectres. He can also pull some enemies you wouldn't expect to be groupable, such as the Desert Doritos and the Husks. Plus, most Sumeru enemies that aren't ginormous ruin machines can be sucked up by him. So in recent times, his burst has actually been pretty solid in Abyss. There's more clearable enemies than you'd expect. Venti's burst is pretty much only ineffective against large robotic enemies and bosses. Granted, there are a lot of those too. Then we have to consider his synergies. His most ideal slot-ins is within freeze teams, and he can be a best-in-slot support for Scaramouche teams. For freeze teams, Ganyu in particular stands out thanks to Venti and Ganyu both having excellent quadratic scaling bursts. But there's honestly plenty of AoE teams nowadays, and Morgana has long since fallen out of the meta as a top team. Ayaka Freeze can also use Venti quite effectively, and since our sweet Archon can provide energy, he helps out with Ayaka's ER requirements quite nicely. I also want to draw some attention to Scaramouche in particular. Venti has the perfect off-field crowd control to seriously improve Scarra's AoE, as he has no issues hitting enemies within Venti's burst. Plus, his normals and charged attacks have a large enough radius to hit anything inside of it. You can swap Venti in as a slot for Scaramouche in pretty much any content where he works, and you'll quickly realize that in this case, Venti is his best in-slot teammate. Yes, this is a situation where Venti is better than Kazuha. All three of those units can also hit within Venti's burst, which is another thing to factor in. Not every ability can reach the height of Venti's burst. Even his emo Roblox boyfriend Xiao can't plunge enemies since they're lifted too high within Venti's burst. Shangling Impact's burst is also too low to reach enemies lifted that high, to name some examples. So, who can hit in Venti's burst aside from the freeze gals and the guy with motherly issues? Neuvillette, Klee's charge attack, Raiden's charge attack. Yes, her initial slash does hit within his burst. Kokomi's normal attacks, Yaimiko, Yolan, Tignari, and Linny will all hit within Venti's burst. As for all the other units mentioned, if you play them, then you can certainly consider Venti as well. Venti's my favorite character. I triple crowned him and have his little figure for Pete's sake. But can I wholeheartedly recommend him? Final verdict is, he's a fantastic flexible addition to your account with great potential when he works. Venti is unfathomably broken and is quite solid and flexible in every other scenario. He's a specialized unit, and you should know what you're getting yourself into when pulling for him. A damn cutie. Seriously, cutest Archon, cutest character. If you love being happy, then pull for him. Hopefully this video was able to help you decide whether you'll be pulling for the sweetest Archon in all of Teyvat. This has been Juice, signing out, and I wish you all a day as relaxing as a gentle breeze.